And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers. Nope, this is the Hook. This is the Hook podcast, a part of the Lakers Lounge little network thing. I'm Anthony Irwin, lead Lakers insider and Lakers content creator for Offside, joined on this fine Friday by Pete Zayas of the Laker Film Room podcast. And Pete, we somehow arrived here with it. We're within a month from the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm. And got our first trade.
We had our first trade. We have John Morant trade rumors. You have Giannis saying that he swears with his fingers behind his fingers crossed behind his back that he's super duper focused on the Milwaukee Bucks. And the Lakers basketball has been so intriguing this year that we just arrived here. You know, it's actually been really fun to be so focused on Lakers basketball, to arrive here without the whole conversation before we got here being, kind of dominated by what the Lakers need. So this is nice. How you been, bud?
I'm good, man. I'm good. And yes, it is nice. It's been a very strange Lakers season, but man, this beats the last few. They're 23-12, sixth best record in the league. And I think on the ascent rather than, I think part of what made the last couple of trade deadlines urgent was the light's running out on the LeBron and AD era, and if we're gonna get to it, we better get to getting that. This sort of has a different feel to it.
It was the frustrating thing about the way that I don't disagree, but it was always kind of frustrating because we were saying you'd better
and they were not.
It's really kind of come on, and they were like. Yeah. But this time, though, I do sense a very different Lakers organization as it pertains to, all right, we have a real opportunity on our hands. I do think that the roster needs a lot of help, and I do think that the league is also really difficult to try to compete in because there's some good-ass teams out there and some really good players that you have to compete against and contend against. But the sentiment that I'm feeling kind of around the Lakers organization is pretty different than it's been the last couple of years.
Absolutely. Likewise.
So that's really exciting. I think that's that would be kind of the starting point that if I was a Lakers fan, I would really be kind of looking for is all right, is this actually finally, and I don't know that this is the year that they go all in, but I do certainly think this is the year that, this will have a lot more in common than last year's trade deadline than previous ones, right? Where last year they trade for Luka and then it was immediately we got to get a center. I do think they identify the needs on this roster, and I think there's a decent chance that they address at least a few of them, and that's kind of exciting.
Absolutely.
Around the league, also super exciting, right? You have Trae Young already on his way to the Washington Wizards. You have John Morant potentially, if not probably, out on his way out of Memphis. You have, like I joked about earlier, and as Harrison and I had a lot of fun with yesterday, you have Giannis swearing on everything that he can, that he is focused on the Milwaukee Bucks for now. And then we have a situation here where I think the Lakers have the exact kind of asset that a lot of teams are really kind of interested in, and that being their expiring contracts, and especially expiring contracts, Pete, that are tied to players that can still kind of play a little bit, it's not just salary dumps if you trade for, Gabe Vincent. It's definitely not a salary dump if you trade for Rui Hachimura on his expiring contract. Maxi's a little bit closer to a salary dump, obviously, but I think the Lakers have, anything ranging from a legitimate rotation player to a good vet to have in your locker room on expiring money. And I think that's the kind of thing that a lot of teams are kind of looking for. And I think that's kind of where I wanted to start the conversation is with that opportunity, with that being something that the Lakers can maybe take advantage of. So what do you think about or what are your thoughts on what the Lakers are working with going into the trade season?
Yeah, this whole idea of going all in, it's a poker term, right? It's the idea of all the chips that I've got, we're going to push them all in. And I think that one thing to keep in mind is our all in is not particularly impressive at this trade deadline. Like,
Yeah,
we've got to talk about, okay,
picks wise.
who would be valuable who would Gabe and Kleba, for example. We're not getting an all-star back, even if they are expiring contracts that can get guys out of deals there. Even if you throw Rui in there, you can get to a higher salary standpoint. But just like, who are the players actually available? Because I agree with you that those are a very underrated asset. Everybody knows that teams want young players and they want picks, but under the apron system, especially, having financial flexibility is huge, and that's where the value of expiring picks comes in. And the value of them don't really render over the course of the offseason. It's at the trade deadline. And so this is what we're coming up on here. What I'm more concerned with, Anthony, is I don't know if you've done this. I do this probably 3 times a week, where I'll go through every single team in the league, even though if I did it like 3 days before, and be like, is this team looking to make a move? Would they make a deal with the Lakers? Do they have any need for expiring contracts and things like that? And just like establishing sort of a list of sellers in the first place, it's not that many. And so when you get to the names of the type of players that you're talking about here, it's like, they're solid, but I couldn't give you a name where it's like, we get KCP on this team, then we've crossed the Rubicon. We're a championship contender now. You know what I mean? And I like KCP.
Yeah.
He'd be helpful for this team for sure. But just when I look at the list of names that I think would be available, there's just not a player that really I think is a huge difference maker.
Yeah, all right. So you hit on a couple of things there. I'll start with the most recent one. This is a trend that dates back to the play-in tournament. This is something that started with the flattening of the lottery odds, right? There is no reason for teams to give up on their seasons as early as they used to. Because before, when it was just seeds 1 through 8 in both of the conferences, you had to be pretty clear-eyed about what your season was going to look like. Now you have owners who are like, I could get a home playoff game here. Like, and so like those owners are a little bit less interested in giving up players like even a KCP who might help them get that home playoff setting in nowadays. And then also, I think, one of my favorite kind of cliches recently has been how bullshit it is that you have teams jumping up the lottery to the extent that they do. And gosh, what's the point in tanking if the lottery odds are going to be flat? And it's like,
that was the point. Why do you get rid of your tanking? Yeah.
That's literally why they did it. Yeah. The league wanted you to stop doing that. And I think that we are kind of starting to see fewer teams just outright tank. You have 1 or 2 at the bottom of the conference, no matter what, that like just the universe told them you are tanking this year. But I think you have fewer teams that are just like giving up on veterans because the gap between tanking outright and competing for a play-in game is pretty narrow, So I think to your point, I do think some of those players, that's why part of the reason, Pete, that's part of the reason why I've always wanted the Lakers to kind of shift their calendar away from with Rob, he has tended to like to trade for guys as you get closer to the deadline, prices come down a little bit. And then, the following summer, they kind of say, well, we want to see what this group looks like with a full training camp. And most teams do a lot of their work in the summer and then try to tweak as you get closer to the trade deadline. And that's part of the reason that I prefer that latter approach, is because there are fewer teams that are just outright giving away guys at the deadline than there used to be. What do you think about that notion?
Yeah, I think it's a case by case basis, but that's absolutely true. And look at the Clippers. The Clippers started out with the record they have. They're only a couple games out of the play-in now. And so to your point, so many teams are disincentivized from what it really has to be is a team that's looking to do some things this coming off season. Like you were saying that teams would prefer to do things over the course of the summer. For example, the KCP trade, the value that has to Memphis isn't Maxey and Gabe. It would be KCP's off of the books. And so they've got another 20 million in space to make an additional move. Think of how Atlanta is moving, for example. They didn't get a ton of talent back for Trae, but they got some financial flexibility that's going to allow them to then flip that possibly even for AD, right? And so think of that same idea just with smaller numbers. And I think those are potentially some of your trade partners. But if you go through the league, combined with what you were saying about teams not really having the incentive to tank in the first place, just the list of sellers, it's fairly small.
I was also the other point that you had made that I really, really quickly wanted to address is when you say that you take a look around the league all the time, like, all right, where's this team at? Where's this team at? Where's this team at? Where's this team at? That exercise is exactly where a lot of like Team X is talking to Team Y about player Z, is like, it's a lot of checking in, like, hey, how's your season going? How's this doing? How's this? And that, like, an agent or something will find out about that. And it just happens to be their players. It's like finding out this is it, and then it turns into an aggregatable rumor. So I was just kind of chuckling at like your exercise being something that teams do, and that leads to some of the stuff that we talk about here.
Sure, 100%.
All right, let's talk about. I want to kind of reverse a little bit here and talk about some of the moves that a move that we already saw, a rumor that dropped just now about John Morant. And then this Giannis thing that's also, I think, casting a shadow over all of the events. So I'll let you choose. Would you rather talk about Trae, Ja, or Giannis?
Let's talk about Trae.
All right. So Trae goes for, like you said, not much NBA talent, right? Depending on how you feel about Corey Kispert.
I'd like Kispert, but yeah.
But like, not a ton of talent there. No picks involved in the deal. It was essentially a salary dump for a player, Pete, who got the Atlanta Hawks to an Eastern Conference final, somebody who meant a lot, at least at one point, to that city, right? That market. And somebody who I've always thought redesigned the way that they or redid how they designed their court, right? Their logo kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger so that they could say logo Trae. But that trade really intrigued me because it's one of those rare deals that I loved for both sides. I think I thought it was really cool to see the Atlanta Hawks be so clear-eyed about their team and the direction that it's heading. And it didn't seem like there was any ill will there. They were just like, sorry, man, we've just kind of moved on from the type of basketball that you need to play. And I really liked that Washington was like, all right, so we have a whole bunch of nails on our team. We need a hammer. We need somebody who can actually, allow those guys to finish. So I love the deal for both of the sides here. I thought Trae reached a point here where it was the exact type of gamble that I think Washington should be making. How'd you think about the trade?
Same as you. And to add on top of that, I love the trade for Trae as well. I think this is a great place for him. I think it's a great framework. I really like Sar, and you got Koulibaly there. You've got several young players that could really use somebody whose first instinct is to pass. And he's one of the very best passers in the game and setup guys in the game. He's not somebody that I think you can build a championship team around, but that's not where Washington is at. And I'm a firm believer that you can only stay in the we're going to stink for ages and ages, especially as just as disincentivized as that's become with the flattening of the lottery odds, is you could stay there forever and ever. And so if Washington can get themselves to being a 35 win team next year or something like that, like, these are building blocks, and you help catalyze two very high draft picks that you've had that could really use somebody like Trae setting them up. So I like that. I like the move for all of them. And I think that it's fascinating just from an asset standpoint. It speaks to like what the actual market is. A lot of times when we talk about, oh, what might this player be traded for? We think of their caliber of player that they are and try to equate that to, okay, how good is the player they're getting back? How many picks are they getting back and things like that? But what they are versus the contract that they're on is just absolutely huge. And that's how you can end up in a place where somebody as productive as Trae goes for no picks at all.
Yeah. I made this point yesterday with Harrison, and it was that it used to be stars were kind of dictated by their standing on their own roster, right? It's like if you were the best player on a team, you were considered a star in the NBA or an all-star. And nowadays, I think that has kind of changed to stars or superstardom or stardom is dictated by your standing among your peers, your other stars around the league. And as such, those max contracts aren't just going to go to the best guy on a team anymore. It's those max contracts are going to go to players in the top 5, in the top 10, in the top 15, so on and so forth. And those guys who signed contracts under the previous understanding of what stardom or superstardom was, those guys are all being traded for each other or being traded as salary dumps.
That's why in assessing the trade market, I was like, I wish we needed some of these players. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like,
totally.
is there a Trae Young of two-way guard or wings or guard swingman types that, because yes, these guys it's sort of a musical chairs game that I wish we could get in on it, but these aren't really the types of guys, Trae, maybe LaMelo. I don't think we'd be going for, considering we're already being built around Luka and Austin.
Oh, well, the guy that actually came to mind in this regard was actually Anthony Davis. I think if it was somebody other than AD, I think that would be something that I would be pretty intrigued in, and maybe even the Lakers would be intrigued in. I think they're kind of out on the AD business.
You can't go back to that. No, that's not.
No,
yeah, that's not.
Also, like, I don't know how the Mavericks would do that.
No, there's no way that could you. Could you imagine?
It's like, all right, we're gonna trade Luka for AD, and then we're gonna trade you AD for your scraps because we don't like his upcoming contract. That would be a tough one to swallow.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that was the thought that I was, just kind of, if this was 2K, right, and there weren't, the feelings
human
of
beings involved,
Mavericks fans out there. Yeah. But yeah, like I'm 100% with you where I look at some of these guys who might be moved, but I do think a version of like a much smaller version of those kinds of trades is something that the Lakers could really kind of benefit from. A lot of these guys or a lot of these teams have useful-ish, solid players on contracts that extend maybe like a year beyond what they would like to actually have them on the books for. You mentioned KCP. I texted you yesterday about Malik Monk, somebody who the Kings were like trying to give away earlier in the summer, or like heading back to the summer when they were trying to make room for some reason for Russell Westbrook. Like, I think that type of move is the exact kind of deal that the Lakers should be looking to make here, where you get a solid player and you basically rent out your upcoming cap space for like a pick potentially as well. You can maybe get a second rounder, a pick swap or something like that, and also improve your roster. I think that's the exact type of trade that the Lakers are probably going to be looking to make more likely than the other ones that exist on the spectrum. What do you think about that?
I think you're spot on with that. And I think the guys that are, best candidates are the guys that are on multi-year deals. So for example, Monk, I think would be the best candidate for we could trade for a useful player and possibly get a second rounder or two back, because he's got 3 years left on his deal this year, then 2 more and Sacramento's been trying to move him and they can't find a taker in large part due to the contract. Now, Lakers are going to have to assess, do we like Malik Monk to that degree that we want him to be around next year and the year after that? Or do we value him relative to what else we could do with that space? Can we actually get a pick back for him? Would the same thing apply to a KCP? I've got this is my list, Anthony, of guards. I'd said on my pod yesterday that I think the Lakers really need a guard. I know we have a lot of focus on two-way wings, and yes, I mean, get in line. If we can get Herb Jones, yes, let's do it. Benedict Mathurin is another guy that I think might be on the move. We'll see. Sadiq Bey. Those are sort of the wings. Agbaji. But from the guards, you got Dosunmu is my number one guy out of Chicago. I would love to get him. Keon Ellis, KCP, Malik Monk, Colin Sexton, Gary Trent Jr., and Cam Thomas, to me, are the 7 guys that are possibly on the move. And those fall into 2 different classes: guys that have a couple of years left on their deal that a team might be looking to move, or and yes, Grimes actually is another guy to add to this. Although I consider him more of a wing, like an off ball, not really a guy you give the ball to. He's a shooter, right? He can really fill it up, right? But yeah, those two classes of players are guys that have a couple of years on their deal, or they're wrapping up their first contract with the team, and they're in that, hey, are we going to keep him or not? This is how we got Rui a couple of years back, was that Washington was like, yeah, we're not going to pay this guy, so we might as well
Watson, I think, falls into this category too.
I would love to get Peyton Watson. No way they trade him mid-season, but he, to me, is one of my top, like, I don't think they're going to be able to do a ton in free agency from signing players. Like, I don't think most of that $55 million is going to go to just a straight up free agency signing. But if we could sign Watson out of Denver, I would love that.
He's or a player like that is the exact or the only real reason that I'm interested in having, cap space next year. Because, like, again, a lot of the best teams in the league, they're going to start looking at their numbers and they're going to start looking at their books. And, you're looking at that second apron as something that, like, you don't really want to mess with. And I think OKC is going to be heading towards there as those extensions start kicking in. I think Denver, right, we just talked about with Peyton Watson. These very, very expensive teams. Look at the cap hell that the Cavaliers are in right now. They are just. I remember back at the during the summer, there was all that talk of like, oh, LeBron's golfing in Cleveland. Oh, he's taking pictures with their G League guys. Oh, look, he's working at their facility. And it's like, how could they make a trade work? And for Cleveland to have been able to trade for LeBron, they would have had to first trade enough money out without taking anything back so that they could actually bring in, like, to get below the second apron and be able to trade for a player or take back, like, was it, if you are above the second apron, you cannot trade multiple players to add up to a singular player, right? Is that do I have that right, or is it in reversed? I forget. The rules are stupid. But anyway, they like, Cleveland may have been a narrative solution to what could have happened with LeBron, but it wasn't a practical one at all because of the cap hell that those guys find themselves in. And a lot of these teams look at the cap, and specifically a lot of these owners are looking at the situation that the Cavs find themselves in. And it's like, we are not doing that.
That's right. And they're a good team as well. They're one of the teams that you wouldn't consider at all a tanking team, that I think there's a small possibility of a trade with Cleveland, because a team like the Lakers with expiring deals can offer them a bit of a lifeline, right? I think if you look at their roster of, like, the best players that are in a salary range that we could actually get them at, DeAndre Hunter is probably your best bet. I'm of the opinion that the Lakers already have 6 guys in their front court, with Vando as sort of the next man up. But I really do like DeAndre Hunter, and so that would be a great move. But that would require Cleveland to say in early February, this season ain't going to be crap. We're going to do our work we're going to pivot to get ourselves out of salary cap hell, instead of actually trying to be
in a wide open East.
Right. And so that's why I think it's a fairly low likelihood. But that type of team, or other teams that are looking to get out of deals like that I think is going to be the utilization of the Lakers cap space between this trade deadline and the free agency period, the summer transaction cycle. I think the utilization of the cap space is going to be more through trades than it is actually signing people.
I want to, unless you have anything else to say about, like, the utilization of the Lakers cap space now, like, the other argument for using the cap space now, Pete, is we know that a lot of that cap space is going to be eaten up by Austin's upcoming deal.
Right, but he's got the cap hold. There's still the benefit of the cap hold.
Oh, totally,
right?
Yeah.
So, and that'll be like 26-ish million likely. It'll depend on if he ends up making more or less than the average salary this year. That will determine his cap hold, either at 20 million or 26, and it's probably going to be the higher one. So even with Austin making more, though, you've got the cap hold, Anthony. So you can, you can work around that.
Yeah, and you have bird rights, so you'd be able to sign them later into the summer and stuff like that. And for what it's worth, Austin's agent and the Lakers are on great footing. So if there is any like question of, hey, can we work this out? Can we get the timing on this right?
They're going to work with the Lakers
So
for
long
that.
as Austin gets paid, I
Of
think
course. Yeah.
the two sides will work really well on it. So
Cool.
I think that's a real benefit to how this is going to. But you also have potentially Rui, and what his deal might look like if LeBron is no longer with the Lakers. I think that increases the likelihood that maybe Rui extends his time with the Lakers beyond this upcoming summer. You have the LeBron situation, right? Like, is he going to retire after this year? From what I've heard, like I it's kind of weird. A lot of people kind of talk about this, like this is definitely LeBron's last year with the Lakers. I don't really necessarily get that sentiment. Where do you stand on that?
I mean, this is just total speculation on that on
Yeah.
my end, but I think it would be a shame if LeBron retired without a retirement tour. He's one of
Yeah.
those legends that like you should know, like it would be the league should know before he retires so they could say goodbye to one of the legends. Like that would be, I think that would be sad for him to just be like, all right, I'm out at the end of it without any acknowledgement.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's going to play another year. And you look at some of the options out there without him signing a minimum, which I don't think he wants to do. I still think the Lakers make about as much sense as just about anywhere else he would sign or resign. I don't know. But anyway, you might have potentially some LeBron money on your books that will take up some of that potential cap space. And in order, like basically, like part of the reason that I don't really necessarily love the idea of thinking of cap space in the very kind of straight line, let contracts expire, spend in the summer kind of way that I think it's been framed sometimes, is because that's a giant opportunity cost given the stuff that we just talked about, that I'm not really willing to pay.
And it punts
And
this season,
Darius,
right? Yeah, it punts this season. Like we've got Luka Doncic in his prime, man. You cannot just
yeah,
do that. Yeah.
I know you believe in the basketball gods in many of the same ways that I do. And if you have Luka entering his prime, right, like at the peak of his powers potentially, you have LeBron still playing at like a 15th to 20th player in the NBA level. You have Austin playing in that same kind of range as well. If you punt a season like that, eventually the basketball gods are going to come back to get you. Like in some way, shape, or form. You're going to be like in a game 6 that you absolutely need to win at home, and nobody's going to make a jump shot. I'm just telling you, that's how that's going to play out.
One of the things we talked about on the LFR pod today was the 2008 season and how that was one of our favorite seasons, even though it ended the worst way possible.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons it's one of my favorite seasons is it was absolutely the foundation for the back-to-back titles that they ended up winning. They did so much of the work, they covered so much of the ground to winning a championship that 2009 was them getting over the hump. And in 2009, they rolled the league. They won 65 games. Like none of the series were super close. You had one shorthanded series that went 7 against shorthanded Houston team, but they blew them out in game 7. But really, they had covered so much ground the year before that to me is ideally what a year like this year is for the Lakers. Is like, of course, I would love to win the title, but have the type of year that it's like, okay, we got most of the way there. We've got a little farther to go, but we've covered most of the ground, and I think they can do it. So if they have that type of approach, I think they'll be successfully kind of positioned for next season.
The other thing that I really like that the Lakers might be able to get involved in here is the buyout market.
Yes,
We've already
we don't talk
seen
about
them
that enough.
benefit from
Yeah.
the buyout market,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like Marcus Smart is not your typical buyout player. DeAndre Ayton is not your typical buyout player, but I do think that they're going to become closer to the norm than we have seen in years past because of how afraid everybody is of this cap of the cap aprons.
And this might be something that the Lakers go, why would we trade for 3 years of Malik Monk when we can sign CJ McCollum on a buyout market? And he's close enough to the same thing without, giving up any future, any future space or anything like that.
I don't know that McCollum will get bought out because I think Atlanta actually needs him. Well, I don't think that trade call has actually taken place, so it actually makes me wonder if we might actually see that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I kind of wonder if that eventually just becomes a 3-team deal and McCollum goes to Dallas, who definitely needs him, right, in the AD trade.
Yeah, whether it's McCollum or somebody else, right? But saying
Yeah.
that that is one thing to measure is as the Lakers are evaluating what trades are available, it's if they're like, well, we can get this guy on the buyout market, they're going to be less inclined to move something for someone else.
But yeah, like to your point, and like I do think there's going to be some really useful players on the buyout market, and like one of my priorities this transaction window as we head into the trade deadline is send out more players than you take back in, so that you open up a roster spot ideally, and send out more money than you take back in, so that you have that much more room under the first apron or whatever it is, that the one that they're hard capped at. The other thing too is that, because I don't believe the Lakers used all of their exceptions this there might be a situation here where they could offer more money to a buyout than some of their competition, and I think that's something that the Lakers would really be smart to try to leverage on the other side of the trade deadline. What do you think about the likelihood, or that being a significant part of your plan, or are you just of the mindset, get the best player you can and then make whatever work that you can on the other side?
No, I think this is a super under discussed part of team building, and I think you're spot on that the buyout market is going to have that. This past offseason with the Lakers getting a couple guys there, that is a harbinger of future offseason. It's going to be a bigger part of how the teams, especially the Lakers, build there. And so, yeah, it's just that to me is a big matter of collecting intel. Who's going to get bought out, right? Like one of the things that allowed the Lakers to pivot off of DFS the way that they did was some knowledge that Ayton was going to get bought out and that Smart was going to get bought out, right? And so that is part of that's one of the fun parts of the GM angle of things, is just like being on top of news and rumors and things like that around the league, so that as you're evaluating trades, you can also put it up against, well, we could get this guy in the buyout market. That I just don't know who those are going to be. I haven't really gone around the league and been like, this guy's going to get bought out. That guy, like McCollum, forgive me, I still had him on Washington in my mind. Like, yeah, if he's in Atlanta, they're going to use him. But he, to me, seemed like in Washington, one of the more likelier buyout candidates. Middleton is still there. Right. And so we could go around the league and see who some of those guys are. But again, it's only a handful of names. It's not like a super big market, but I do think it's part of the Laker plans.
Yeah. I think, and this is where we can kind of get to the John Morant news from a little bit ago as well. The more of those kinds of trades that are kind of out there, the big contracts that have to move, those usually go for multiple kind of smaller or mid-sized contracts, right? Unless you have like a John Morant traded for Zach LaVine kind of deal, which I don't think is going to happen, but you can never put anything by the stupid ass Kings. But like the more of those kinds of trades that take place, though, and the more of those mid-size and expiring contracts that get moved to situations where that veteran may not want to be necessarily, those are the kinds of guys. Like that was the reason that I thought Smart was going to be bought out at the heading into the summer. Was like, why would Marcus Smart want to be in Washington? Like, what's the point? And I think this is what you were doing, but you use the phrase, the Lakers especially need to be attuned to the buyout market. And it's because the Lakers are one of those teams that buyout guys flock to, right? Because they give them, especially a Lakers playoff team, gives them a higher chance or a higher possibility of no longer being considered, or not always from that point on being considered, a minimum contract guy. So do you want to expand on that point a little bit?
No, just that is a huge thing amongst players, is getting off of that hamster wheel of, once you're considered a vet min guy, you are considered that henceforth. Like for a young player that for whatever reason they, find themselves in that position, getting out of that is absolutely essential. And so, yeah, the Lakers, nothing happens quietly on the Lakers, right? You can't come to the Lakers and have an underrated season. If you come here and play well, people will know about it. They will see it. And you will be rewarded as a function of it. And so that's one of the things the Lakers can leverage for sure. And so treating those guys well, making sure I think that's a future way of getting guys in here to the Lakers for sure.
Yeah. What did you think of the John Morant stuff? Like,
I mean,
I don't know who would trade anything for him.
That's the thing, is a lot of, there's going to be a lot of musical chairs and a lot of Yeah, I don't even know who would trade for Ja. You brought up Sacramento as a landing spot. I don't know, man. Like Trae, I'm higher on Trae than I am on Ja. I don't think either of them you build a title team around necessarily, but Ja's one of those guys that I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old, and I liked him too coming into the league. I like his spirit and all of that, but I, you know, I can't even like maybe for LaMelo in Charlotte. Can you think of a team? That's not a good idea. I can't think of a team.
Yeah.
That's not a good idea.
Yeah, I just so heard like the father in your voice, like just like
Yeah.
that's not smart. Like why, but yeah, like Pickup Hoop, our mutual Twitter friend
Mhm,
Pickup
mhm.
Hoop threw Milwaukee out there, and I think they're desperate enough to do just about anything. So maybe they make a little bit of sense for John
Oh,
Morant.
good call. Mhm.
Um, I think, yeah, like, without taking into account, like, overpaid point guards getting traded for each other, right? Levine, LaMelo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I think those kind of go without saying. Okay, yeah, that's technically an option, but it doesn't really solve anything for either of those teams. I do want to say this as a quick aside on Morant. And I think this is kind of some of what you were like getting at there, where it's like I liked his spark when he got into the league, and I liked it. Me too. Like that's part of why I think I had such a visceral reaction to today's rumor, or that like Memphis is just now listening to offers on John Morant. It's like I really think he and Zion Williamson hurt the league. Like those guys were supposed to be pillars of the next generation of NBA superstardom, and neither of those guys came anywhere close to their ceilings. Either as superstars like that like get commercials and all that stuff,
Mhm.
or as winning basketball players. And I genuinely think that hurt. Like took like it just took a bit of a hammer to where the league could possibly be at right now. And I think that like maybe I slightly overreacted to like who would give up anything for John Morant. I still
Mhm.
don't think anybody. I think he's going to go for less than Trae went for. But like part of my reaction to Morant potentially being available is like you fucked this up,
Sure.
and I'm like the disappointed father in me comes out. It's like you had everything. What were you doing?
Mm.
That's where I'm kind of at with Jaw.
If you extend that idea out, Anthony, if you look at the NBA draft, just the top 3 selections from 2014 through 2020, 2019. Let's say 14 through 19. You have an unusually high number of guys who are just odd ducks and personality wise. Like they screwed it up on some level or another between Ben Simmons, Jabari Parker, Jaleel Okafor, Zion,
Yeah,
and Ja. That's part of the reason why when we had the last Olympic team, it's you still got the
you
old
needed
guys.
like a 38
Yeah,
year old
you got the old
LeBron.
men are still the best American players in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, right? And um yeah, and a big part of that is that window between 14 and 19. Look at the top 3 picks in almost every draft. There's one and often 2 guys where it's like that guy's kind of a head case or is really fell short of his talent level.
I think that was like the heyday of tanking. And
Mm,
I think that we are feeling the ramifications of that team building process. Because if you have guys show up and they know that, well, if we lose, our team isn't really that upset about it because
mm,
they're just trying to stack ping pong balls anyway. I think that event now Jaw doesn't really fit into that category. I think he had so much success early on. Um, and I think that team just fell so far short of expectations that it's just kind of it happens, like kind of reminded me of the Portland Trailblazers from back in the day, where they had Jermaine O'Neal and they had
mm.
like that whole like era of the Trailblazers. And like, yeah, you ran into the buzzsaw that was the three-peat Lakers, but they also never really figured that seriously into the Western Conference as a whole. They were never on the Spurs level. They were never on the Kings level. They were always just kind of an annoying team that the Lakers knocked off in the first round, but that was it. And I feel like that's who Memphis like kind of they took on that kind of character which is not ideal. But yeah, I think with Ja, what I think the Lakers could again look to get involved in here. Obviously, don't want the Lakers to trade for Ja, but some team is going to position themselves, and maybe it's like a 3-team trade where the Lakers help facilitate it and get themselves an extra. Like we just saw the report yesterday that I guess. Oh man, I hope I'm not. Well, essentially, a version of the trade that the Warriors are looking to make is sending Kuminga somewhere to like Sacramento, and Sacramento sends some stuff to Brooklyn, and both sides send some stuff to Brooklyn, and they get Michael Porter Jr. back. And like if Monk is one of those players who gets involved there, if I'm the Lakers, I'm like, yeah, I can help out. Send us Malik Monk, and we'll give you, whatever, and make it work. Monk makes way more than I thought he did. I thought he was in like the 10-12 area. He's closer to 20.
Yeah, and next year he will be at 20. He's like 20 and 21 the next 2 years. And that's part of the reason why, like, if the Lakers, and I don't have a good enough gauge on that, Anthony, that idea of how harmful is Malik Monk at $20 million a year for 2 additional seasons on top of this? What does a front office person look at that, and how do they react? Do they say, hey, we need a first back for that? We need a second, 2 seconds. It's just fine as it is because he'd be helpful. If we traded for Monk, by the way, I would love to get Drew Eubanks back. This is a much smaller need, but this fits under a cap type of standpoint of a third big that would be okay to be a DNP, but doesn't get pushed around, right? This is sort of a Jackson is our backup, but if we face, say we face Houston in the playoffs and Jackson's getting knocked around like a pinball, just have somebody who can be an option who's also okay being a DNP. I like Eubanks. I think he plays hard. He's a good defensive player. So getting those 2 guys back, he'd be a side piece in that.
Yeah, it's like the Jack Landales or the Jock Landales of the world. I think he's probably a little overqualified for that kind of a role, but like that kind of player. I just want somebody who I've always believed that a team benefits from having somebody on their roster that when he's on the court, the other team is a little worried he's going to throw a cheap shot. I've always liked having a guy like that on teams that I root for, like I'm a Vikings fan, and the Vikings they've always had like a Harrison Smith, or they've always had like a hard hitting guy who, if a receiver was going across the middle, they were always kind of like, where's this guy at?
I grew up on Ronnie Lott, man. So you don't got to tell me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The John Lynches of the world, like those guys that like, and I think a basketball team benefits from, like, I think this is a big part of why Isaiah Stewart is as great a rim protector as he is, because everybody knows at any moment that guy will take off on you. And I think that's valuable. I think that kind of a player really helps. So yeah, that's 100% agreed that can be something that that can be one of the boxes that the Lakers check off while they're also focused on this other stuff. And I think that, because here's my thing, Pete. I was, because I was listening to your pod yesterday with Darius. I think it was the one that you guys released yesterday. I forget, but like you guys were reacting to the Spurs game, and you just like flat out came out and said, "Our guards stink."
Our guards stink.
And I was like, I hadn't really thought about it in this way, but fuck me, dude, you're absolutely right. And it would kind of reminded me of like Jen and I. It's the beginning of the year, so we do a lot of our budgeting out, and we were looking at like our expenses going into the year. And this is the first year that we have Miles in full-time daycare. And it didn't like cross my mind that was something that we were getting ready to do. And that was the thing that made me push the piece of paper across the table. Cause it was like, I'm budgeting out for all these things. I have this, I have this, I have this. I have like show expenses. I have house expenses. I have kid expenses. I have, all these other things, like fun things that Jen and I would like to be able to do. I'm turning 40 this year. She turns 40 next year. So like I'm setting aside all of this money. And then for some reason, I didn't even think of like something is huge. It's $1,100 a month for Miles's daycare. So like, and like when I realized that was like, Jen, I need to pour some wine. And I just like got up from the table for a sec. And when you said, yeah, our guards stink, that was my push. Like it's like, God damn it, Pete's right. And I like, and I think that is something that they really need to address, because like they've been trying to have Marcus Smart bring the ball up half court, But at the first possession of the game against the Spurs, he turns the ball over trying to do that. The first possession of the second half, he turns the ball over. And the second one of like, it was just like, all right, enough, and
Well,
that's not going to happen with Austin.
Luka goes to the bench and they don't score at all, right? At all.
Yeah. Well, not only do they not score, but I never felt like there were like two possessions that they could replicate, 2 times in a row. There wasn't a set that they could set up and run twice in a row. There was nothing they could do. So what do you like? To what extent are you willing to commit resources to addressing that problem, given that you have Austin, you have Luka, you have LeBron as your primary offensive engines? Like, how do you balance that being a strength of the Lakers while somehow also being a bit of a weakness?
Yeah, if you split it up,
weird spot.
It is. If you split it up between offense and defense, it makes more sense. Lakers have plenty of guard play from an offensive standpoint if everybody's healthy, because Luke is a guard and LeBron is a guard from a functional basis on the offensive end. Now, LeBron can be a big man, he can be a forward, he can be a lot of things.
He can be LeBron.
Yeah, he is fundamentally you give that guy the ball and have him run the offense, perfectly capable of that. Lakers have an overload of that but after the top 3 guys, it falls off an absolute cliff. So to your point, you don't need to spend a whole ton in the way of resources to get a 4th player that can do that. However, between like getting through the regular season and having some offensive pop in the LeBron groups that start the 4th and the 2nd and 4th quarters, I do think having a guard that can do that, and maybe that's just Austin, right? Maybe they'll find a group with LeBron and Austin that they can build off with that. But to me, this is getting that backup guard type. This is part of the reason why Dosunmu's intriguing to me, is that he is a 2-way guard. He is somebody that can guard the 1 or the 2 spot. He's fast. He would really improve the foot speed of the team. And he's a 2-way player. He came into the league as a very defense only type of player, but he's developed into a really good offensive player. He's averaging 14 a game, close to like 50, 40, 90 type of splits. They are looking to lock up Kobe White. Anyhow, that sort of player, Anthony, that is, I think Dosunmu's a borderline starter. He's mostly come off of the bench for them this season. But that's the type of resources that I'm looking to allocate toward that, is in that same range of $10, $15 million off of the bench type of player, maybe all the way up to 20. And this is where you get into those Gabe plus Maxey type of trades, which adds up to, I think, $22.5 million. But that is the type of player that's somebody that's just better than Gabe at this. You know what I mean? That can still guard on the other end, which obviously is the argument against Monk.
The other thing that I think the Lakers offense desperately needs is somebody who can just pierce the defense on their own.
Yes,
Luka and LeBron bludgeon defenses,
and that piercing the defense with speed is a great compliment to that type of player.
Exactly. And like Austin can do a little bit of it, but if he's going to do it, usually it involves a screen, or it involves a few dribbles. Like it usually involves like Austin really likes the behind the between the legs, behind the back, cross back over type of move. But the kind of guy that I'm talking about is a guy who all it takes is a hezzy. All it takes is just boom, and he's by. And like that, the Lakers haven't had a guard like that in a minute. And like really since Russ, maybe Schroeder. Like just give me somebody who can, there's somebody in front of them, they're guarding them, and they're saying, oh fuck, because that guy's really fast.
Is there any planet
Lakers need that?
Is there any planet where you would consider Ja?
No, absolutely not. No, because that's over indexing. That's like hey, I'm doing one job over the weekend and I'm going to pay more for the tool to do that job than it would cost to just pay somebody to do the job.
Do it.
So like that.
Yeah, it's too much money for that spot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also just like I want Ja on the other side of him being traded out of Memphis. I want Ja after the universe tells him, "Hey, man, you screwed this up."
The 2020 Dwight Howard Ja.
Yeah, exactly. Like I want, if I'm gonna ever get into the Ja Morant business or the Zion Williamson business or any of those other kinds of guys' business, it's going to be like after the universe has told them, dude, you could have had everything and you've now lost everything. And now you have to try to rebuild to get everything back or some version of everything back. Those are the buy low moments that I would be looking to get. Anybody, is there any way the Lakers, do you think, can pick up a starting caliber player at this deadline? Like, is that something that because I think that's something you and I have talked about in the past, either on the show or in texting or whatever. That was at one point a pretty high priority for me, is that like they need to like the Rui spot in the starting lineup needs to be addressed. Do you think that's something that they can do here? Or do you think I actually think they've kind of sort of done it with Jake, but
I'm excited about Jake for sure. In doing that whole exercise of going around the league and seeing who might be available, the players that I would consider starting quality players that I think might be available. And there was that tweet from Chris Haynes about the Pelicans aren't going to be moving Murphy or
I didn't
Jones
see that.
or that just came out, right? And so if you look around, like, who is that supposed to be? Who is the starting caliber player? If you could give me a name, I'd be like, I think we have a chance to trade for him or not. But I don't think there's going to be a lot in the way of starting caliber players on the market, unless we're talking these AD, Ja, Trae, LaMelo, right? Those level of players that I think are just a level of salary beyond and at positions that we don't need to the same degree. And so a lot of, like, is KCP a starting caliber player? I think he's kind of borderline. Is Dosunmu a starting caliber player? I think he's kind of borderline, right? That's just Keon Ellis has always come off the bench for Sacramento. He just turned 26 yesterday. You know what I mean? And so I would love to get that type of player. I just throw me a name, man. I just don't see who that would be.
The problem also is that, like, it's one thing if you're trading for a starting point guard, but you're trading for a starting wing. And starting wings change organizations, right? Like, look at the impact Dylan Brooks has had on the Phoenix Suns. Look at the impact that, like, Michael Porter Jr. has had on the Brooklyn Nets. You know, like, if you're trading for a starting wing who is legitimately like championship contender, starting caliber, you're talking about guys that like are probably the hottest commodity in the sport outside of actual superstars, you know, and you don't get that kind of a player for one first round pick and salary, expiring salary. It just, that's the kind of move that's the kind of player that the Lakers get in the summer that hopefully, going back to the point that I made earlier in the show, if they kind of rethink their calendar here, that's priority 1, 2, and 3 when we get to the summer.
Oh, amen to that. Yep.
All right, let's really quickly dive into some of the questions and comments that you guys have left over the course of the show. We have a super comment, which means I get to play the most important clip on the show. Pinty 23 writing, Gabe and DK and a second for Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis. I would have to look to see if the contracts line up properly. I think they do.
Yeah,
off the top of my head.
That's a legal trade or very close to it. The one hesitation is Dennis has got 2 more years after this, similar to Monk, but he's at like 15 a year. I think that would certainly help our guard core in foot speed and defense. If the Lakers had the appetite to have Dennis back. Dennis has always been one of my favorite role players of the 20s for the Lakers. I think that there is concern. I know there was concern about Dennis and his ability to like get his jump shot off in the highest levels.
Yeah,
he was always going to sort of.
That was the reason that they swapped him out for Gabe, because remember I made the point, the windows point, right, where Gabe's jumper goes up in shorter windows than Dennis's does.
Yeah, so he can get the shot up, he just misses it. So. I think that there might be some hesitation for round 3 with Dennis, but I think that's a really good idea, Pinty, that in terms of addressing both defensive and perimeter issues and the fact that our guards stink. But I'd be a little surprised if we traded for Dennis.
Yeah, he'd be the Thanos, like, no matter what you try, you just keep coming back to me kind of a deal. Although I would happily take Dennis back if it meant getting Keon Ellis. Like, I really believe in this guy. one of my keys to like team building is like whenever I'm thinking about what I would like to see the Lakers do, I always ask myself, all right, what would Sam Presti do here? And then like the opposite version of it is, all right, what would I like to see the Lakers do here? All right, what would the Kings not do? And like, who is somebody that the Kings don't value? Chances are that guy's probably pretty valuable. And Keon Ellis kind of falls directly into that category. I really think whoever gets him is going to be thrilled. And we're going to be sitting here saying, like, what were the Kings doing? Because that's just generally the takeaway from whatever the Kings are always doing. I had a question. I'm sorry, our buddy, our mutual friend, Jerry asked this, and I'm not going to be able to scroll back up through all of the comments and find it, but it did kind of allude to something I've been wondering a lot about, and it's the two-way guys that the Lakers have. So Nick Smith Jr. has been used a lot as one of their two ways. Magnon basically hasn't been used at all. Koloko was not used, and then he was waived, and they brought in Drew Timme, who hasn't been used at all. Kobe Buffkin is somebody that a lot of people were kind of hoping that they would maybe waive Drew Timme for to make some room for Kobe Buffkin and have them utilized. What's your like kind of stance on two-way guys being a part of a team's rotation?
Yeah, I think I've got a very use them or lose them sort of philosophy on that. My favorite year of two ways for the Lakers was last season. I thought that they won probably 4 or 5 games as a result of Jemison, of Goodwin being productive. And one of the things that I liked about last year that they haven't done this year is they cycled through several two-way guys. There have been a couple of changes to the two ways this year, but really they went. We didn't sign Goodwin until there were several other guys at the two-way spot that I was thinking about this last night of like, kind of hope they start cycling through. Like, I like Magnon. I'd like to see him play and get some, I'd like to have seen him get a chance by now, but if you're not going to play him, if you're not going to play Timme, like give Buffkin a shot. Who are the guys around the G League that have been playing well? Who's the next Jordan Goodwin that if you don't feel strongly enough about either of those guys yet, like try somebody else. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, the Magnon thing, I'm still waiting for it to maybe pan out a little bit, but it's like he was kind of relatively unknown when they brought him in as a two-way. He was kind of a surprise two-way addition. And then I figured, oh, well, if he's a kind of a surprise, remember like Austin was like, when they converted him right away to an NBA contract, it was so surprising that it was like, oh, maybe they really, really believe in this guy. And then it turns out they were absolutely right to. And I thought Magnon wouldn't be like on Austin's level, but I thought like, well, that's kind of surprising. Well, let's really see what this guy has. And we basically haven't seen him. So that's been kind of disappointing. Yeah, the other one that like the other thing that as you were talking about came to mind was I kind of wonder if this is where no longer having Jesse and Joey Buss in the organization impacts their ability in finding some of these other two-way guys. That was like their specialty. That was like probably the thing that they were best at, and now they're not there. And I don't believe they've really been replaced because a lot of scouting departments are solidified right now in their current spots. So do you think I'm overthinking that? Like I think that's really impacted what they've done.
No, I think that's very much the case. And as you said, that's was sort of where Jesse and Joey's jobs kind of met up in the same place. And the part of the roster that they were most impactful over is that obviously Jesse overseeing the scouting department, you're going to, a lot of those guys are going to be the players that you signed for your South Bay squad. And so they work together a lot on that, I don't have any news in terms of new hires or how and it sounds like they let go of some of Jesse and Joey's people with them as well.
Yep.
And so like, I'm not sure if Nick Mazzella is still with I'll try and find out there, but he was the GM of the South Bay roster that, I think that's hurt a bit. And yet Lakers have pretty good record and have navigated the season pretty well. But I do think that that was something I was thinking about last night is that I would like to get a little more out of those two-way guys.
Yeah. I'm not like complaining, that because I actually thought Jesse and Joey had become a little overrated by the end of their tenures, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can't squander two straight first round picks and have everybody talking about them like, God, they are the prodigal sons. Mm-hmm. But in this one specific regard, I do think their absences is kind of felt. Really quickly before we get out of here, Pinty did want to note that Dennis is only partially guaranteed in 27 and 28. That
Okay,
does
that's
make
good.
it a little bit easier, but
yeah, and that would make him an attractive trade asset the following. That's a good note. Good note.
Yeah, and actually to that point, one thing that the Lakers, I think they're always kind of cognizant of. So it's this is something that they're probably doing anyway, and every smart team is probably doing is whatever acquisition that they do make, you also have to consider them as a candidate to be moved down the road, right? Like the timing of some of these contracts and partial guarantees and all of that stuff, like I would imagine the kind of player that the Lakers eventually bring in, that's something that they're going to be looking to fit into the equation as well. Is like, all right, yeah, this player helps us now, but then we're also looking at ways that player can help us with rosters down the line as well.
Which is part of the reason why Dennis at 31 or 32 years old, or like guys like that are probably less likely, even if they are like, hey, it'd be good on this year's team. They're probably a little less inclined for the post 30 guys.
Yeah. I mean, I really like Drew Holiday, but his contract is brutal and he's just too old, so here we are. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Pete. Thank you very much for hopping on with us. Anything that you want to plug before we get you out of here?
No, man. No, this was fun though.
LFR is where you could find him. It's an excellent podcast. It's probably the only Lakers podcast that I listen to every day. Like it's you and Darius do a fantastic job. So make sure you guys are checking them out. And that's going to do it for this week's episodes here of The Lounge. Until Sunday, I'm Anthony Irwin. That was Pete Zayas. This has been The Hook. Have a great rest of your weekends. Make somebody else's. And we will talk to you guys on the other side of the weekend.